last video we talked about why coaching. In a future video we'll talk about how. In this video we're going to talk about the who, the when, and the where. Now on the who, we're going to talk about this both as the coachee and the coach. So starting with the coach, we really have to ask ourselves why we are the right person to be the coach. There's no one person so skilled, so perfect, that they are the right coach for everyone. So we have to really examine not just why us coach, period, but why us coach this particular person. Right? There's all sorts of reasons that there might not be a good match between the coach and the coachee. It could be a bias, it could be pre-existing relationship that's too hard to change, it could be style or demeanor. There's all sorts of reasons that we might not be the right coach. This often will show up either early on or late in the relationship. Early on is that the mismatch makes it hard to even get started. We don't seem to be doing coaching. The coaching isn't welcomed. It could be that they just don't welcome coaching, but it also could be that they just don't welcome coaching from us. So we really have to examine, are we the right person in that particular instance? And we could really study and figure out and test and improve and change who we are as a coach. But honestly, is it really worth it? Isn't it better to find somebody who might be a better fit for that coachee? So think about that early on. As we get further into the relationship, once we develop a rhythm and a relationship and trust, most importantly, then that coaching relationship can last sometimes a very, very long time. But occasionally it goes stale, it gets static, and the dynamic falls into a trap where neither is learning well enough. And certainly we can try to shake ourselves out of that, but it's also an opportunity to think, maybe I'm no longer the right person to be coaching this other individual. So think about that as another. We see this in sports all the time, right? A coach could be tremendously effective with a team. All of a sudden they're not. They move to another team and they're instantly effective again. And it's really just that the relationship perhaps had spoiled, had soured, had gone stale, and they really weren't providing that tension that drove learning that needed to be there. So really examine and always be aware, am I the best person or effective at all in being the right coach for this person? The other side of the who question is, who are we coaching? Now, most people I meet that consider themselves problem-solving coaches are not very deliberate about this question, and they miss the leverage of their coaching by not thinking it through. So for starters, are you sort of drive-by coaching? Are you drive-through window? Or are you strategic? Now, there's tremendous generosity if you help anyone who pokes their head into your office or asks you for help. And that's truly generous to be able to help everyone who asks for help. But are you truly leveraging your time and having the impact that you want? That's what being strategic really means. And so you have to think about how you want to operate as a coach. Do you want to simply be available to help anyone? Or do you want to be strategic and find the leverage with who you're coaching? Now, once you are engaged in problem-solving coaching, you really need to think about who more specifically. So it's not uncommon for there to be a problem-solving team or multiple people involved in a problem. Are you coaching the team or are you coaching the leader of the team? The more specific you are about that, the more effective you can coach. Also, the more transparent you are about that, the more effective you can coach. What I mean by that is that if you're coaching the leader, you might coach differently. You might have pre-meetings and post-meetings. You might sometimes attend the team meeting and sometimes let them fly solo. How you approach that really is helping that individual learn, including allowing them to have some of their own failures along the way. If you're coaching the team, it's going to be a very different approach. How you engage, what you do when you're there, and how you support the whole team and prop them up to include them all in the process is going to be very different. Now, the more transparent you are about who you're coaching, allows you to do some more things. It opens up the boundaries of what you can do as a coach. For example, if I'm coaching the team leader, I won't really hesitate to let the team know that I'm coaching that leader, because the team can help me. They can feed me information, they can help me look out for the things that I'm doing, and they can also understand that while I'm sitting there being silent, my job is to observe that leader. I'm observing that person that I'm coaching. And so the more transparent we are about who we're coaching, the more effective we can ultimately be. So make sure you have a plan. Make sure you have clarity around who you're coaching and why. Because really, ultimately, we are trying to impact other people and their abilities. And so you don't want to waste your coaching abilities, your coaching capacity, and effort without knowing what you're getting out of it. So now we'll talk about the when of coaching. There's really two different models to think about how we engage. Now what's important here is that coaching is a process. Having a single coaching conversation isn't really coaching. It's really just a momentary opportunity to impact. But coaching fundamentally is a process. It's a relationship that you have to build throughout an entire process. Now in that process, you can either make it event-based or make it cadence-based. Cadence-based is fundamental when you're going to have a rhythm to your problem solving or to your coaching. This works great for manager-boss, one-on-one, weekly or bi-weekly meetings, specific coaching relationships where you can set up a standing meeting that happens once a week or once a month, whatever that might be. And so that cadence is really what allows you to engage and keep the rhythm up. It keeps the accountability high because that next coaching session is already on the books, so to speak. And so that really puts some pressure on the coachee to make sure that they're ready for that next coaching session. So cadence-based gives us a rhythm, gives us a relationship, and whether they solve 3 problems in between coaching sessions or a quarter of a problem, we still have plenty that we can learn and leverage in that coaching. Now event-based is a little different. Event-based is finding those leverage points in problem solving where we want to do the coaching and making sure that when that moment hits that we then go and coach. So it might be that we're ready to start to shape the problem statement. Well, that's a great moment, a great event to start to coach around. When you move into current reality, we're starting by developing a plan for how we're going to go study current reality. It's a great leverage point to do some coaching. Once they've studied current reality and are reaching some conclusions, that's another great moment to invest in coaching. Developing, brainstorming multiple countermeasures and evaluating those countermeasures, and certainly testing and evaluating potential solutions. These are all events within problem solving that can be great times to trigger coaching. Now, essentially what that means is you have a contract, a verbal contract with the person you're coaching, that when they're ready for that step, that they let you know. Now, this really requires that the coach be accessible, be available, have the right proximity, whether that's through technology or in person, so that when that moment is ripe, when that moment occurs, when that event occurs, the coaching can begin. So fundamentally, when the coaching relationship is flexible enough, I actually prefer event-based problem coaching, because you find those high leverage moments in problem solving and you can really focus in on helping that person through those key inflection points, through those forks in the road. But sometimes it's just not possible. Right? You might have a busy schedule. Everybody might have a busy schedule. There might not be the flexibility. For me, for many years, coaching involved hopping on a plane and visiting a client. And while I coach remotely today, most of the time, that allows more flexibility. I might only coach an individual once a quarter when I would hop on a plane and go and visit. And so what that would mean is that they might have solved 3 problems in the time for my last visit, but we can review what they learned, how they approached it, how they thought about it, where they struggled, and we can review what they have on their plate next. And so as long as you're deliberate about how you have to coach differently in cadence-based versus event-based, you can still be highly effective in either mechanism as a problem-solving coach. The last aspect of this is the where to coach. Now, technology has enabled coaching from any corner of the world, and the ability to engage with someone on a very personal level has improved dramatically over the last 10 years. But there's no question that there is one best place to do problem-solving coaching, and that is at the point of activity, where the problem actually occurs. Not every problem has a point of activity. Sometimes a problem around a team dynamic or a larger business process or a cultural problem is in the ecosystem, is in the atmosphere, but still being closer to that point of activity is really important. This is often referred to sometimes as the Gemba, which is real place or real facts, but fundamentally the closer you are to the real problem, the easier it is to coach. And here's why. If I'm coaching someone and we're both standing there and we're looking for waste in a process because the problem we're trying to solve is a burdensome process and we're taking waste out. Well, fundamentally I can say, tell me what waste you see, and I'll share what waste I see, and we can compare notes. And it'll help me as a coach understand what their blind spots are, what their opportunities to learn would be. Now, if I can't do that, then I'm really relying on not just what they see, but my ability to probe, to see past their lens, to see beyond their words. And that requires much more experience and practice to be able to see through the words and the perspective of the person you're coaching. So ultimately, not being able to be at the Gemba, I don't think is a good excuse not to coach. But when you have the opportunity, coach at the point of activity. It's always going to be the most effective approach. So here we've covered the who, the when, the where of coaching. We've already talked about the why, and we'll soon move on to the how of coaching, which of course is ultimately very important.